Hey everybody, this is a series of videos providing a statement analysis of the words spoken by Andrew Windsor in his interview with Emily Maitlis from BBC Newsnight. I share the transcripts on screen and provide subtitles of my commentary. I hope you find this analysis interesting. Let me know in the comments. Here we go. Emily says, witnesses say they saw many young girls coming and going at the time, and you were there, staying in his house. Andrew replies, I mean, if they were, then I wasn't a party to any of that. I never saw them. I mean, you have to understand that his house. I described it more as a railway station, if you know what I mean, in the sense that there were people coming in and out of that house all the time. What they were doing and why they were there, I had nothing to do with. So I'm afraid I can't make any comment on that because I really don't know.
I described it more as almost as a railway station.
So the first thing to point out is that Andrew does not deny there were many young girls coming and going. He doesn't deny it. Instead, he says if they were, and by using the word if, he is allowing for the possibility that there were many young girls coming and going. Similarly, by using the pronoun they and them, Andrew is linguistically pointing to his knowledge of the existence of many young girls coming and going. In saying, I wasn't a party to any of that, Andrew is not saying what he wasn't a party to, so this is an unreliable denial. Andrew might be speaking truthfully in saying he wasn't a party to lots of young girls coming and going, but by saying he wasn't a party to it, he has leaked that he knew it was happening. A reliable denial would be something like, I didn't see any young girls coming and going. But Andrew has not said this. He loses verbal fluency really badly in this section, indicating significant disruption to his honest recall and that he isn't speaking directly from his memory. Andrew enters controlling and patronising mode by telling Emily what she has to understand. You know, she's an intelligent adult. She doesn't need Andrew to tell her what to understand. She can figure that out for herself. What he's doing is redirecting attention away from what he doesn't want to talk about. In describing Epstein's house as almost a railway station, he is simply providing himself with a weak excuse. A sign that he doesn't believe this excuse himself is him following it with, if you know what I mean, checking to see how it went down with Emily. So we have to ask ourselves, why would anyone want to go and stay in someone's house if it was like a railway station? And imagine the nightmare for Andrew's security team trying to manage his security if it really was like a railway station. The other thing to note in Andrew's response is Emily specifically refers to young girls, and Andrew specifically avoids referring to young girls and redirects to talk about people generally instead. Emily asks, another guest was John Brockman, the literary agent. Now, he described seeing you there. Really? Says Andrew. Emily says, getting a foot massage from a young Russian woman. Did that happen? Andrew says no. Emily says, you're absolutely sure or you can't remember? Andrew says, yeah, absolutely sure. Emily says, so John Brockman's statement is false? Andrew says, well, I wouldn't. I don't know Mr. Brockman, so I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, I wouldn't. I don't know Mr. Brockman, so I don't know what he's talking about.
I'm not really sure what Andrew is trying to say here. He doesn't ask who's John Brockman, but says the word really in surprise when his name's mentioned, which indicates he knows who John Brockman is. And he was asked, so John Brockman's statement is false. But Andrew doesn't answer this question. Instead, he fudges it and makes the completely illogical claim, I don't know Mr. Brockman, so I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, this is just dumb. We don't need to know someone in order to understand what they're talking about. If Andrew had not been getting a foot massage from a young Russian woman, he would have had no hesitation in making a definitive statement, something like, Brockman has got it wrong, but he doesn't say anything close to a reliable denial. So Emily's next question is, it might seem a funny way to break off a friendship, a 4-day house party of sorts with a dinner. It's an odd way to break off a friendship. Andrew's reply, it's a difficult way of that's a very stark way of putting it. Yes, you're absolutely right. But actually, the truth of it is that I actually only saw him for about what? The dinner party, the walk in the park, and probably passing in the passage.
But actually, the truth of it is that.
So there's another notable loss of verbal fluency, indicating Andrew is flustered when presented with the stark truth. This is what he is objecting to, the facts and the stark truth. He's probably not used to people calling him out bluntly in this way. He reveals his reluctance to deal with the truth by commenting on what I think is a very reasonable observation by Emily, that it's an odd way to break off a friendship. I mean, who could disagree with that? He dislikes it so much that he makes it his priority to comment on the starkness of the question first. Interestingly, he doesn't disagree with Emily's observation. Instead, he just tries to downplay how much time he spent with Epstein over those 4 days. He makes this self-correction when it seemed he might be about to leak that it was a party, but he breaks off after saying part and then adds on the words dinner party. It's unnecessary to say, actually, the truth of it is, because the assumption is that when people speak, they'll be telling the truth. So by including this phrase, the truth of it is, Andrew is leaking that elsewhere he has not been telling the truth. This response of Andrew's is unbelievable because can you imagine if Andrew had passed Epstein in the passage after the walk, telling him the friendship is over, yet Andrew is still in his house? How awkward would that be? And he freeloaded like a parasite in someone's house for 4 days when he knew he was ending the relationship? I don't buy this, and I don't think anyone else does either. Emily's next question is, so let's go to that Central Park walk which was snapped. Friends of yours suggest that Epstein wanted that photo taken. Perhaps he'd even set it up. Do you worry that you were being played? Andrew's reply, again, new information is coming out since his suicide, has made us reappraise that walk in the park. We can't find any evidence, or my staff and my people and I can't find any evidence to suggest that that was what he was doing.
Set it up. Do you worry that you were being played?
Again,
Andrew doesn't answer the question, and what he does say is, in my opinion, a little bit word salad-like. I mean, what's he talking about? He goes straight to a deflection about new information coming out, but he's vague and doesn't specify what that new information is. He hides behind other people in his use of the plural pronoun us and referring to my people and my team, and so we can interpret this as him attempting to give extra weight to his account and evade personal responsibility at the same time. He talks about not being able to find any evidence, but he doesn't say evidence of what, and just makes vague reference to evidence to suggest that that was what he was doing. So another vague and unreliable denial. And the reason I think it's deliberately word salady is because what evidence did they think they would or could find to prove Epstein was playing Andrew? And where did they look for it when the biggest piece of evidence was staring them in the face? And that was that the walk in the park was photographed and publicised. I don't know why Andrew would argue this point with Emily and seem to defend Epstein when it would be in his favour, surely, just to admit that Epstein had probably played him. But no, Andrew, with his ego and vanity probably responsible, can't concede that he may have made a mistake and had likely been tricked. In answer to the same question, do you worry that you were being played? Andrew continues, I mean, you can look at it in so many different ways. The fact of the matter is that somebody very cleverly took that photograph. It wasn't as far as I remember, nor do my security people remember, anybody being present or close because there were enough security around. I mean, there's photographs of the security people are around in the photograph. So I mean, he could have done, but yeah.
you can look at it in so many different ways. The fact of the matter is that somebody very cleverly...
No, Andrew, you can't look at it in so many different ways. This is just him gaslighting and attempting to deflect attention away, probably because his ego can't tolerate that he may have been played by Epstein. He doesn't say what the different ways of looking at it are, because he can't. There are only two ways of looking at it. He was either being played or he wasn't. He then says that he doesn't remember and his security people don't remember anybody being present or close, by which I assume he's referring to them not seeing the person who took the photograph. Firstly, saying you don't remember seeing anyone is not the same as saying you didn't see anyone. And secondly, so what if you didn't see the photographer? It's irrelevant and unnecessary to say this. It's not answering the question, and it's just a distraction, and probably another excuse for Andrew to bring in other people for him to hide behind and to make himself feel important by referencing his security people. Andrew then becomes quite incoherent with a speech error where he says the fact of the fatter instead of matter, and going on to make several self-corrections, needless repetitions, stuttering, and finally trailing off at the end, repeating, he could have done, but yeah. I mean, it sounds like some lyrics from a bad song to me. He doesn't finish his thought, but except to say yeah. So he does end up conceding he could have been played by Epstein. So why not just admit that in the first place? The last point I want to make about this segment is Andrew referring to the person as very cleverly taking the photograph. When it's estimated that us humans take over 5 billion photos every day, how in the name of all that is holy could taking a photograph be referred to as clever? All the person had to do was wait outside Epstein's house, and when people came out, press a button. It wasn't that the photographer had been very clever, but what Andrew doesn't want to admit is that he had been very stupid. Emily goes on to say, I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel that you were part of Epstein's public rehabilitation? Andrew replies, oh no, funnily enough, I don't. No. I mean, if he was doing, if that photograph was taken for that, with that purpose in mind, then it doesn't equate to what actually happened.
If that photograph was taken for that, with that purpose in mind.
Saying funnily enough is unnecessary, and why say it when clearly there's nothing funny? It is a sign that he has something else in his mind that he's comparing this public rehabilitation idea to, that he's concealing. Perhaps it's a leak from Andrew that he acknowledges it would be a logical conclusion to draw that he was part of Epstein's public rehabilitation plan. With so much uncertainty in the preceding segment, but where he does eventually concede that Epstein could have played him, now he's done an about-face, and all of a sudden he is certain that Epstein wasn't using him for his public rehabilitation. And the only reason he gives for this certainty is because Epstein was not publicly rehabilitated. This is a completely false conclusion to draw. Basically, what he's saying is that if a plan does not work out, that means there was no plan, which is clearly nonsense. So this is more meaningless word salad from Andrew, in my opinion. It seems that he is trying to protect his own ego, and in so doing, he is incriminating himself further by seeming to protect Epstein from having any malintent towards Andrew. It is baffling why Andrew did not just agree with Emily here that Epstein was probably using him for his public rehabilitation. Emily's next question is, so why wouldn't you announce this breakup when you got back? Did you worry that he had something that could compromise you? Andrew says no. Emily says, do you regret that trip? Andrew says yes. Emily says, do you regret the whole friendship with Epstein? Andrew replies, now I still not. And the reason being is that the people that I met and the opportunities that I was given to learn either by him or because of him were actually very useful.
Now, still not, and the reason being is that the people that I met.
Andrew doesn't answer the question about not making a public announcement. Again, unfortunately, Emily asked 4 different questions in a row, giving Andrew the chance to cherry pick and avoid what he didn't want to talk about. I would love to have known what his answer would have been to the question, why wouldn't you announce the breakup? And we can only speculate what Andrew might have said. Andrew gives one-word answers to the second and third questions, and then cites the already debunked as fake excuse of having learning opportunities through Epstein as the reason he does not regret being friends with him. There is something seriously wrong with Andrew, that he did not take this golden opportunity to distance himself from Epstein and say he regretted the friendship. The reason Andrew gives for not regretting the friendship is actually irrelevant. The only thing that is relevant is that he states he does not regret being friends with a convicted SA offender. Let the implications sink in of how that will have sounded to Epstein's victims or other victims of SA that may have watched the interview. Andrew's failure to condemn Epstein's behaviour and his failure to convincingly distance himself from Epstein raises the question of, was Andrew complicit in some way in Epstein's crimes? Andrew goes on to say, in answer to the question, do you regret the whole friendship with Epstein? He himself, not, as it were, as close as you might think. We're not, we weren't that close. So therefore, yes, I would go and stay in his house, but that was because of his girlfriend, not because of him.
Not, as it were, as close as you might think. We weren't that close.
So he misses out various articles and pronouns. He himself not, as it were, as close as you might think. This is poor grammar. And how does Andrew know what others might think? It indicates he is aware that others think he and Epstein were close friends. So he follows up his false narrative about learning opportunities by trying to remind us that he and Epstein were not that close. But again, using the plural pronoun we belies that and makes it unreliable. For it to be a reliable denial, we would expect Andrew to say something like, I was not close friends with Epstein. Then lastly, he attempts to avoid his responsibility for his association with Epstein by hiding behind Maxwell again and blaming her for him staying at Epstein's houses. Hang on a minute. Just moments before, he said he stayed at Epstein's houses for the learning opportunities. Now he's changed his story to say he only stayed at Epstein's houses because of Maxwell. Which is it? Or are they both lies? Emily's next question is, was that visit, December of 2010, the only time you saw him after he was convicted? Did you see him or speak to him again? Andrew replies, No, that was, funnily enough, 2010 was it. That was it. Because I went, well, first of all, I wanted to make sure that if I was going to go and see him, I had to make sure that there was enough time between his release, because it wasn't something that I was going into in a hurry, but I had to go and see him.
It wasn't something that I was going into in a hurry, but I had to go and see him.
Andrew is not saying he didn't see or speak to Epstein again after 2010. All he says is, that was it. But he doesn't say what the that is, and he doesn't say what the it is. So another unreliable denial. He uses the expression funnily enough again, and the same things apply. It's a sign he has something else in his mind that he is concealing. Perhaps that it was not the last time he saw or spoke to Epstein. He stutters and loses verbal fluency badly, which, as mentioned before, indicates discomfort and can be a sign of deception when outside the usual baseline and when it appears alongside other sensitivity indicators. The stuttering and repetition of I is sensitive because pronouns are amongst the very first units of speech that we learn to say, and any stuttering over them, especially the pronoun I, is a significant mark that the person is not speaking from their memory and possibly being deceptive. And there are other signs as well in this segment. For instance, he starts to say, because I went, but he self-corrects and changes direction to go back to explain something else first. So taking out all the stuttering and repetition, this is what he says. Well, first of all, I wanted to make sure that there was enough time between his release because it wasn't something that I was going into in a hurry. He's not saying anything meaningful here really because there's too much missing information. He hasn't said why there needed to be enough time. He hasn't said between Epstein's release and what. He said he wasn't going into something, which is vague, and then he doesn't say why he wasn't in a hurry. In addition, none of this has anything to do with the question, did you see him or speak to him again? It is pure deflection. Andrew's language indicates that he knew it was not wise to be seen to be visiting Epstein, and certainly not too soon after he was released from prison. He knew and still went, and but for the photograph, he might have done so undetected. He ends his word salad with the twice repeated phrase, I had to go and see him, I had to go and see him. No, Andrew, you did not. But clearly, in Andrew's mind, for some reason, he believed he had to go and see him, but he is not being truthful about the real reason why, in my opinion. He gives excuses that don't stand up to scrutiny, that he didn't want to take the chicken's way out, and he wanted to be honourable, but I don't think it would be unreasonable to conclude, as Emily indicated in one of her questions, Epstein probably had information that could compromise Andrew. In the circumstances that Epstein had compromising information that could hurt Andrew, it would, of course, make sense to keep the friendship going and not do or say anything that might upset Epstein. Emily then says, and stay with him and stay in the house? Andrew replies, I could easily have gone and stayed somewhere else, but the sheer convenience of being able to get a hold of the man he was in and out all over the place. So getting him in one place for a period of time to actually have a long enough conversation to say, look, these are the reasons why I'm not going to, and that happened on the walk.
But sheer convenience of being able to get a hold of the man he was in and out.
The convenience argument is such an implausible excuse for someone like Andrew. He has, or had, an entourage of staff travelling with him everywhere he went to cater to his every whim, including arranging meetings with hard-to-get hold of people. The other thing is, if it was going to be so difficult to get hold of Epstein, this is another reason why trying to see him in person was not a good idea, nor necessary. Andrew could have put in a letter something like, because you're so difficult to get hold of, I'm sadly having to write you this letter to break off our friendship. All the nonsense about getting him in one place for a long enough conversation is Andrew in need to persuade mode, making up a story that isn't true in an attempt to justify the unjustifiable.